Having a good day. Welcome to drboycetv.com, the home for intelligent Black people. And today we're going to talk about a little bit about college sports. We're going to talk about HBCUs, Deion Sanders. We're going to talk about the money, the NCAA and money, and that amazing game between Alabama and Georgia yesterday. And so today, to hit this conversation, I get a chance to talk to Jeff Lightsy Jr. from the Black Boss Channel. How you doing today, Jeff?
I'm pretty good, Dr. Boyce. How about yourself?
Doing good, man. Doing good. So, did you see that game, the Alabama game?
Yes, I did. I saw Georgia finally get the monkey off their back and defeat the King Saban, Nick Saban, who always wins all the time, and people get tired of it. But I definitely watched it, and it was a great game. It was a great game to watch.
So, be honest. Did you call it? Did you think it was going to be Georgia?
No, I didn't think it was going to be Georgia. I don't think Georgia thought it was going to be Georgia. I'm gonna just be honest. But once the best receiver for Alabama went down, the game changed. I mean, I don't know. Like if you watched it, but Jamison Williams, who will be a first round pick in the 22 NFL draft, went down with a knee injury, and I'm praying it's not severe, ACL or anything. But once he got hurt, the game changed. And in Alabama's other really good receiver went down the first time they played Georgia in the SEC championship game. He had 1,000 yards, 100 catches. Jamison Williams had 1,500 yards, 90 catches. So to lose both your best receivers and to replace them with freshmen, it's kind of hard to come back from that. So that
Wow.
was rough for Alabama.
Okay. So that gets context. I kind of felt like Georgia was going to come back with. I felt like Georgia was going to come back with a vengeance. I felt like they, felt like they had something to prove. But you know what? That is true, though. When you think about, like, I watched that first game actually several times because I was really impressed by just a lot of it. And I got this sense that like both of these teams had great defenses, but there was a point where Georgia couldn't stop Alabama anymore, but Alabama was still able to stop Georgia. And I guess that didn't happen because Alabama lost two of its best receivers. So thanks for that insight, man. Okay, so let's talk about this. Right, yesterday I pissed a few people off because I talked about some of the money being made in these sports events, and a lot of people don't talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about the money, but I kind of want to talk about it because it affects Black people. We know that most of the great athletes are Black, and I use this picture when I put the words Black labor, white wealth at the top, and show this picture of this big brother from Georgia carrying the white coach on his back, and I looked at some of the highest salaries in the NCAA as far as coaches and stuff like that. A lot of these guys are making over $10 million a year. I think the guy at USC is the highest paid coach. He's over $10 million. And I just think it's kind of wrong. It's racially wrong. I see this as a type of systematic racism where the Black guys are doing the work and the white guys are getting the money. So what are your thoughts when you sort of process, the money of college sports and what you're saying?
Well, what was worse than that before this past July 1st, it was essentially legal slavery. Because you got to think, Dr. Boyce, you worked on these campuses and you met a lot of these athletes and you saw this stuff. These dudes, not only do you not get paid from the university that makes hundreds of billions of dollars, not hundreds of millions, hundreds of billions, because this goes back for a very long time. They make billions every year. But not only did you do that and not get paid, you got a scholarship. Say if a scholarship max at a highest level institution is $100,000 a year, you paid 100. That's a huge number, but we use it for 4 years, 5 years. That's $500,000. That one individual made you millions. So if we're doing finance money, that's a hell of a return on investment. 400,000 to get 400 million, just in that perspective. But these guys couldn't, until this past July, they couldn't even sign autographs and get money for it. They couldn't even get endorsement deals. They couldn't work jobs. Like through your scholarship, you couldn't work jobs. You couldn't do anything. So you literally were solely dependent on NASA or on the university. My bad. I'm sorry. But like, do you get what I'm saying? Like, so it was literally modern day slavery up until this past July. And finally, the damn Supreme Court, even though, last I checked, Supreme Court been around a long time. It took until 2021, the Supreme Court to be like, yo, this shit ain't right. Like, yo, this is literally slavery taking place. These kids can't work. These kids can't earn a living. And they don't get paid from the university, yet they make these universities billions every single year. At least we can allow them to go get an endorsement deal. At least we get, if Dr. Boyce wants to buy them a cheeseburger, at least they can get a cheeseburger. Like we suspending them and taking away their eligibility and their chance of a livelihood at the professional level just because they going to bed hungry. You know what I'm saying? Like it was the famous story of Shabazz Napier, who played for UConn, who said, "Yo, I won a national champion, and everybody think I'm riding high, but I go back to my dorm room and I got to heat up a pack of noodles because I can afford to go get something to eat." It's like, wow. And so they changed a rule, something similar back then, and then they finally allowed the kids to make money. Look, I completely understand it, because the reason why it affects Black folks, and not just those athletes, but the Black community, is because who is all this money going to? Like, where is this money going to? It's going to a white university owned by white people, or that's funded by the white government. So where, like, you talk about balancing things, and people say, oh, all things are created equal. Well, that don't sound equal to me. I know in the past you have talked about big government buildings. Well, that's essentially what college campuses are. They're big government buildings, and the big government is ran by the white folks, and it pays all the white folks. Ain't too many people at the University of Alabama or at the University of Georgia, whether it's in faculty or board members, board of trustees, whoever, that look like me and you. So yes, they get funded. Their checks are getting cut because of what those young men did on the field last night. And you don't believe me? Go look at the revenue that is brought in by college football. And not just college football. Hell, we can just talk about by that game alone. It was probably 5-10 million people watching that game last night. It's a lot of checks being cashed by ESPN, by whoever. I talked about this when I was talking about HBCU football, and what is the difference? What is the difference between a Georgia and an Alabama versus a Mississippi Valley State, a Southern, a Jackson State, or whatever? Like, what is the difference? They're all schools. They're all supposed to be government funded or whatever. It's because those schools get a lot of checks written by a lot of people, whereas the HBCUs don't. And they all got Black players, but the Black players are choosing to go to those schools because of all those checks that are being cut and can be financed to their education, to what they can produce on the field. So that is literally the only difference, is the resources. So when we talk about when whether it's Dr. Boyce or Dr. Anderson or whoever's talking about reparations, we're not just talking about reparations as far as cash value or whatever. We're talking about the changing of the resources, even at the collegiate level, because that all of that makes sense. The only reason why those big, strong, fast Black men are going to Georgia and Alabama versus the schools that have professors and fan bases and people that look like them is because of the resources. Point blank, period. That's it.
Well, let me show you. You got some of these stats here. This is a list that I found on Alabama.com, AL.com, of the 2019 revenue, pre-pandemic revenue.
That's 1 year, Doc.
Programs. What? Say it again.
That's 1 year. Look at those numbers.
Yeah, university. How many of y'all knew? Give me a yes or no. How many of y'all knew the University of Texas made almost $250 million in 1 year in college sports? University of Texas made $223 million. Texas A&M $212 million. Ohio State $210 million. Alabama's number 7 at $164 million. Where's Georgia? Georgia's number 5 at $174 million. So they're making, hundreds of millions of dollars off these athletes. I don't know if anybody knew that, but you're talking about real money here. You're talking about, I think NCAA wide, I think the amount of revenue they make is a tad under $20 billion a year. $20 billion a year. And what I want Black people to understand is, just kind of hear me on this. These are your athletes that are making this money. Y'all know what it is. Y'all know what it is. I mean, I always point out pictures like this where you see some little scrawny white guy surrounded by a bunch of big, strong brothers who could either be in the NFL or if they're not in the NFL, they want to send them to prison, right? They're like, we don't want guys like this running the street, right? So ultimately, because they can't put them in prison, they got them on the football field. Either way, they're going to make money from them. And I see these pictures all the time. And what this is a reflection of reality. This is a reflection of the fact that these athletes are the ones doing all this work. And the guy in the middle is the one who's getting all the money. So this is kind of like pimping. It's racialized pimping, because I've never seen anybody who ever watched a football game just so they could see the coach. They always want to see the athletes. They don't want to see the coach. So let's talk about, Deion.
One thing to add to that, though, Doc, one thing to add to that also is that you see that was Nick Saban in that picture. You see him, he's 70 years old, right? So he can do what he does till you're 70. These boys can't play football till you're 70. right? So they end up left out with all the injuries, everything that came from playing the game, right? Whether it's CTE, messed up ankles, arthritis, broken bones, you can't walk right or whatever. You get all the injuries or whatever, and you get a fraction, like very, very small fraction of whatever it comes with it. Now, sometimes it can be life-changing money, but compared to what you just showed in the 1 year versus whatever, these teams, whether it's universities or NFL teams or whatever, offers those kids, these young men, it doesn't even compare. And you can only do it for so long. So that's also like, people really have to think about those things. And when we put those on a macro scale and really look at it, it's like, yeah, we love this sport, but who is what? Like, these figures aren't just made up. Like, somebody's getting paid with that 200, 100. Like, who's getting this money, and why isn't it benefiting not just these young men, but these communities these young men come from? Because the only reason why they play the sport is to get out of poverty. Like, they play the sport, like they love the sport, but they see it as a way out, because the communities that they're coming from is in shambles, and that's a lot of things people don't like to talk about.
Everybody, I'm talking to Jeff Lightsy Jr. from the Black Boss Channel. We're talking about all the big money being made in college sports from Black athletes. You can follow Jeff at jlightsy7 on Instagram. So everybody go follow Jeff for sure. Hit the thumbs up button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Also, this weekend, if you want to learn about things like crypto and stock options and real estate and stuff like that, we are having a generational wealth conference in the Black Business School. If you're interested, we start Saturday morning. It's virtual. You can watch from home. You can go to generationalwealthconference.com. We have, I want to say, about 10 different experts. I think Ash Cash is coming to talk about how to write a book. You got Julian Gordon coming to talk about real estate. We have a lot of great people there that are going to really help you in all the areas, tax strategies, insurance, all the stuff you want to know. The Generational Wealth Conference is going to be great. So feel free to go to generationalwealthconference.com, or you can also go to boycewatkins.com to get more information. All right. So let's switch then a little bit, Jeff. I want to ask you about Deion Sanders recently, and this links to big money. When Deion Sanders, signed some of these really great players that are going to Jackson State, and he's doing a great job down there. A lot of people seem to feel that he took their property. They seem to act like, like he stole something from them. And
because he did. Because he did. And the reason why, this is why I say this though, Doc, because that's the way they look at them. See, you just showed those numbers and those figures of what that looks like for the Texas and the Texas A&M, these big white institutions, right? But when Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, comes in and takes one of those guys, well, you put one hole in a boat, it might just be, or in a ceiling, it might just be a little dribble, but eventually that hole gets bigger. Oh, there's another one, and bigger and bigger. And what these people, whether it's fan bases or the people that's seeing the actual money, they see that hole can actually expand. Because what happens is these young kids like Travis Hunter, who's the number one player in the country, or Kevin Coleman, who was a top 50 player in the country, the reason why they're choosing to go play for Coach Prime and go to Jackson State is because they can play at a school for a coach that looks like them, that acts like them, that talks like them, for coaches that all do the same, and then a fan base that looks like them, talks like them, acts like them. See, when you go to these big white institutions, whether it's Ohio State, Texas A&M, or whoever, you might play in front of 100,000 fans. But what does 90,000 of those fans look like? They look like Tommy from Bauer. You know what I'm saying? Like, they look like, whoever. But when you go to Jackson State, yeah, it might be only 60,000, but it's 60,000 us. It's 60, so it's a different experience. And also you get that HBCU experience. You get to play in front of these, the J sets or whoever. And so it's a whole different culture shock. It's like walking into your own grandmama's living room all the time. Like, man, you go into somebody's house, I'm like, damn, this looks just like my house. I grew up just like this. Like, it's very familiar in here. And that's the scary thing. These institutions know that, because no matter how much money or no matter how great of things that they can offer, all the, fancy tools and trinkets that they can offer, they can't recreate the culture. They can't. They just simply can't. And so that is why they feel like he is actually stealing players from them. And if enough players see what's going on, not just there, but at Grambling, but at Southern, but at whoever, they might choose to actually go there because it actually fits them more like a glove. And whereas we have to try to, maneuver and manipulate things and get our coaches to do stuff, try to act cool. Whereas Prime's already cool. And he been cool for 30 years, 40 years, So, like, that's the thing. Like, and the fans feel the same way. The fans feel the same way. They feel entitled. Why in the hell would you go to Jackson State? They don't seat 100,000 like us. They can't do this, and this, and this. Yeah, just so I can come to your campus and you can call me a nigger, or I can come to your campus, you can do, like, these are real things that are taking place. Like at Texas A&M, they had students out here saying all these kind of crazy stuff. Justin Fields went to Georgia, who just won the championship, by the way. Justin Fields transferred out of Georgia because another student athlete on the baseball team was racist to him. You get what I'm saying? You don't have to deal with that when you go to Southern, because guess what? If I call you a nigga, you call me a nigga, we look the same. It's all love. Like, it's all that, whether it's right or wrong, but it's the truth. It's not, a form of racism. So that is why they feel like he is stealing from them, because in their minds, he really is.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's interesting because that kind of ownership, that possessiveness of the sport, it reminds me when LeBron left Cleveland and the owner acted like he was a runaway slave. like you're not allowed to make your own decisions for your own life. And I wonder how that's going to play out in terms of driving revenue for HBCUs. I like the fact that they are starting to fill up the stadiums, just like the white schools can. I wonder what the response is going to be in terms of what the white schools are going to offer. Because I've just seen, players get a lot of little trinkets and stuff like that, and, suitcases full of money and stuff, all kinds of stuff. So I'm wondering how that's going to play out. I mean, I'm really happy that Prime is getting the black athletes to come to the black universities. I think it's real fascinating. I don't think there's any other ethnic group that has this problem where you can't get your own people to want to be around their own people. It's weird that Black people actually want to go and work with other Black people and generate revenue for other Black people. It's and it makes me think about Dr. Claude Anderson's book, Black Labor, White Wealth. That's why, that image that I had thrown up earlier, the University of Georgia player carrying the white coach on his back, to me, that was a great, a great microcosm. There's the image in case y'all didn't see it. It's a great microcosm of college sports. These big buck Negroes carrying these rich white guys on their back. This guy's getting almost nothing for his labor. He's getting a little scholarship, but scholarships don't cost nothing. I was a university professor. It don't cost nothing to put an extra student in your class. It's easy, right? And this coach is making, of course he's smiling. He's happy because his horses made him an extra $7-8 million, in income last year. He's going to use that as generational wealth. He's going to buy his family a yacht and a mansion. He's going to put his daughters through school. They're not going, his kids are not going to have to go play a sport and break their neck and get CTE in order to get through school. His kids are going to be privileged, right? So they're going to buy apartment buildings. They're going to do all kinds of stuff that this kid's mother probably can't do, and I really think that we got to take a moment to care enough about ourselves to be a little bit offended by that. The very least, if the athletes are not going to be compensated, at least put them in a position where that revenue is going to go into the Black community, because people forget that, when you talk about Black wealth dropping and Black communities falling apart and Black neighborhoods ain't got no jobs and no opportunities and broken down houses and no resources. Well, the reason you ain't got no resources is because you're used to giving everything away.
Absolutely.
If you keep giving it all, your athletes are your greatest resource. Why are you giving your greatest resource away? And why are Negroes defending this system where Black people do not benefit in any substantial way? So I'll let you get the last word on this, Jeff. So what do you think this is going to go forward? Do you think that more HBCUs are going to start, bringing in more of the top line recruits and really sort of boosting their bottom lines as well?
I believe they will, as long as they can hold, like they have to protect Deion Sanders like they protect the president. Because what's going to happen is some institution is going to try to pull him away from the HBCUs. And then when that happens, and if it's going to happen, it's not when, it's if. It's not if, it's when. And when it does happen, his response. He says he's called by God to be at Jackson State to provoke the change and to try to level the playing field. Well, the only way to do that is if more recruits can come. And as more recruits and more top players become coaches, or more top coaches come to these institutions, these universities. The only reason why they don't is because the universities can't pay them like the big white institutions, the big white universities. And the only reason why the big white universities can, as opposed to like a Jackson State, is because they integrated in the 60s. All right? And so the integration is really what changed everything. The integration, because you got to think 40, 50, 60 years ago, black folks couldn't go to Georgia. Black folks couldn't go to Alabama. I know the man who integrated the SEC. His name is Nate Northington. You can look it up. He integrated the SEC in the 60s. He's still alive. Like, he is still very much well alive and able-bodied. And once he integrated the SEC back in the 60s at the University of Kentucky, that is when you got to see all these guys go to Alabama, Ole Miss, LSU, wherever. They weren't happy about it. The student body and the general public at large that were in those states, especially like a Mississippi and Alabama, wasn't too happy about it. We've seen the images about, Ruby Dee getting escorted into school by the National Guard and stuff like that. Like that wasn't that long ago. These people are still alive. But when that integration took place is when their bottom line skyrocketed and our wealth and communities plummeted. And so we talk a lot about that during the civil rights movement. And it just wasn't the black community at large. It was also the universities. And that plays a part. If you want, all these, big institutions, these universities talk about they love their players. And there's players from Alabama that'll go on and play in the NFL. Most of them won't, but some of them will. Same for Georgia. But that money that university made ain't changing at all. It ain't changing at all unless a couple of these guys, a few more of these guys trickle down every single year, start going to these Jackson States, to the Gramblins, to the et ceteras. Then we're going to see a push for teams to try to go grab a Deion Sanders and try to make that flip, because as long as he's there, other people are going to feel inspired, because you got to think a guy like Deion Sanders is taking a pay cut being a head coach at Jackson State. If he wasn't a coach, he could be on TV and do all his other endorsement things more frequently. And he would probably make a lot more money doing that than being at Jackson State. But instead, he decides to take a pay cut and take a chance not only on himself, but on his community. And that's making a world's ton of difference. And it's just whether more people are going to be willing to do stuff like that. So giving back to the community is huge.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you what. My hope is that guys like Deion Sanders can I don't know what Deion did with all his wealth he made from playing for the Cowboys and in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And my hope would be that these guys could be independently wealthy enough that they don't need a job. Mm-hmm. Why the hell? I mean, how rich you got to be before you don't need a job no more? That's my question. I mean, if I went out and did a job like that, or took a role at an HBCU or something like that, and I do this to this day. I mean, I took a position with not really a job, but I agreed to host a podcast with Push Black, and they were like, "Well, how much do you want to be paid?" I said, I don't really, you paying me is not going to make me take the job or not take the job, because I have wealth. So I'll do it for free because I want to do it, and if I got to go make some money, I'll go make some money, but I'm not looking for a job, and I'm not, and I never played for the Cowboys. I wasn't prime time, you know what I mean? And I think that it's one of those things where, if you look at, like, in the white community, you have guys that are, you have these white guys out here that get to the point where the money isn't the driving force in their decision making anymore. Like, you can't go bribe Elon Musk with a job. You can't bribe Jeff Bezos with a job. They're doing things for a higher purpose. And I think the question to me becomes, how do we get more black men in that position where you're just like, look, I don't care. Yeah, you could offer me, $3 million a year, $5 million a year to go coach this other school, but I can make $5 million over here doing something else. Or I already got money stacked up, somewhere. And I just want to do what I love now because I'm getting older and I want to make good decisions that are going to make me happy, that are going to be relevant, that are going to build for the future. And that's another reason. Another reason why you don't have the institutions you deserve in your black community is because you don't have that builder mindset in the community. You don't have people that just say, look, I'm not going to go rent myself out for a job. I'm going to plant a seed and create something that's going to serve generations to come. Like maybe, if I'm Deion Sanders, I go to Jackson State because I want to build a legacy. I want to start, while Jackson State isn't at the top, I'm going to open that gateway for the top players to come to Jackson State and other schools. And then one day they'll have my statue up like they have Eddie Robinson and Grambling,
Absolutely.
and they can say that I helped build an empire. That's what I want. I want to see some empire builders. The guys who created the NFL were empire builders. They bought the Chicago Bears for $100 and the Buffalo Bills the Buffalo Bills. I don't remember what year they were purchased, how much it was for, but a lot of those NFL teams that are worth billions of dollars were literally bought for less than $1,000. And these are just people that just said, okay, in a generation or two, we're really going to have something here, but we got to go ahead and do this and do it for a reason other than simply going after the highest paycheck. That paycheck mentality is one of the biggest reasons Black people lose as a community. You need empire builders, not just paycheck chasers. Right. So, and I'm not that I would put Prime in that category. I don't know his mindset. I've never met him. If he does see this video, he can come on the platform. I'd love to talk to him. And I congratulate him. I think that what he's doing at Jackson State, I love it. And I just think it's hilarious that that Florida State, rejected him, and he's going and stealing Florida State recruits, stealing them, right, so to speak. And then on top of it, but the thing is, Florida State doesn't deserve shit because their team has been terrible for years.
Exactly.
Like they half the HBCUs could be Florida State. Like I remember they lost to, what was it, Jackson?
Jacksonville State.
Jacksonville State. Yeah, they're losing the community colleges now. So what the Seminoles ain't, y'all ain't had nothing really going on since the 90s anyway. So just be quiet.
The other thing about what you're saying, Doc, too, is that the appreciation for Prime will never be what it like at Florida State. What he's done in 1 year for not only Jackson State, but for HBCUs, period. Not just HBCU sports, not just Jackson, not the SWAC, for HBCUs, period. In 1 year, what he's done. They will never appreciate him at Florida State like that. What the man has done in 1 year. Imagine, like you said, a nation building or builders, what he could do in 10 years. The impact, these are the things off the top of my head I can tell you what Deion Sanders has done for HBCUs in the 1 year he's been there. So for the city of Jackson, Mississippi, they're saying that he brought in $30 million for the entire city in 4 months. That was a record. I think it's more than that. I think that's some low numbers. I think it was more than 30 million, but 30 million is a record anyway. He set the attendance record for not HBCU attendance, FCS, all the FCS schools. He set the attendance record, broke it that was also held by Jackson State. Not to mention his contribution, him saying he's going to Jackson State, put Eddie George, a former NFL player who also doesn't need money, go to Tennessee State. He's going to build that program up. And also that led to Hugh Jackson being hired at Grambling, former NFL coach, doesn't need a bunch of money. He's going to build that program up. These are things he's done in 1 year. Also, Jackson State won the SWAC East, won the SWAC Championship, played in the Celebration Bowl that had the second most viewers ever, sold out the Celebration Bowl, which is the HBCU, basically like the national championship for the first time ever. So they sold it out so much that they had to put in, first of all, the Celebration Bowl was averaging about like 35,000 people, 38,000 on a good year. They sold it out at 45,000. They had to open up more seats to 48,000. Then they had to open up 1,000 standing room only tickets. Like, this is what he did in 1 year. This is what one man's decision, I ain't gonna one man, but one man's decision has done for an HBCU or Black community in 1 year. Imagine what 10 Deion Sanders could do. Now, there's only one Prime, there's only one of him, but like-minded people could do like him. Imagine what 10 could do. Imagine what he could do in 10 years. Imagine what 10 of them could do in 20 years or 10 years. Like, this would be game-changing. This would literally lift your community up in a matter of a decade, a matter of half a decade. Like, this is why it matters so much, because I'm not saying look at those Texas figures and think you're going to get that. But even if you got a fraction of that, them folks making $240 million a year. $240 million a year. Imagine if you get a fraction of that. We ain't saying you're going to get all of it, but eventually we want to get there, but we ain't saying you're going to get all of it overnight. But if you get a fraction of that, that's going to change not only your life, but your community. But a lot of folks are saying, oh, that's not realistic, or, oh, we got to just keep the status quo. For what? The status quo clearly isn't benefiting you the way it should. So why wouldn't you want to provoke change? Or why wouldn't you want to change something? That's why what he is doing is so magnificent, because of all those things and more. And that's just what he's been able to do in one calendar year. I can't wait to see what the future's like, because I know he's been, and I forgot to mention, he also brought in the number 1 overall player ever, the first one ever 5-star to choose not just an HBCU, but an FCS program. FCS has over 100 schools. He's the first 5-star to ever choose an FCS program. Yeah, Prime also did that. So just imagine, because he came in with a different mindset. He didn't come in, not to say no disrespect to all the other HBCU coaches or former SWAC coaches or whatever, but he didn't come in with a woe is me mindset, or we can't do that because we're Jackson State mindset, or a loser mindset. He came in like, yo, I'm Prime. I've been a winner my whole life. I was a winner when I went to Florida State. Florida State wasn't popping before me. I got Florida State popping. You know what I mean? Like, folks in the NFL, Atlanta Falcons weren't popping before Prime. I got them popping. Then I went to San Francisco one year, won a Super Bowl. Next year, I bounced to the Cowboys, won a Super Bowl. So I've been him. So he's been him. He's got like that alpha masculine energy. So he just brought that to Jackson State. And he's doing the same thing he's been doing since he's been in the public spotlight over 30 years. And it's working.
I wonder if he's going to stay when he has, how many sons that play for Jackson State? 1 or 2?
He's got 2.
Yeah, I wonder if he's going to stay after his sons are gone.
That's realistically, if you're just being realistic, that's the timeline. People like me or whoever, I would love to see him stay 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But his sons are freshmen. One was just finished his true freshman year. The other had a redshirt COVID freshman year. So they have technically 4 years. And then Travis, which is the guy he just got, which is the number 1 player, you realistically wouldn't think he would leave before those guys left. So that is the thing to, watch out if you're just being realistic and being a real fan of the sport. But in my opinion, once again, a lot of coaches go, move up because they need the money. Well, Prime don't need the money. And the impact that Prime could make at Jackson State, what he's made in 1 year and what he can make in 10 years or 15 or Lord willing, 15, 20 years. There's nothing he could do at a Florida State or a Georgia, Alabama that can even match what he's did in 1 year for HBCU culture. Like, there's nothing. He can win 10 championships at Florida State. Because that's what because Florida State look like they're going to fire their coach soon. So, they think he's just going to bounce over to Florida State. He could go to Florida State and win 10 championships. 10. 20, you know what I'm saying? He can win 10 championships. They will never love him the way he is loved at Jackson State after 1. Because no matter what, he's always going to be, he's just going to be, Prime. He's going to be Deion Sanders. He's just going to be a black man. Let's just be honest. He's just going to be a black man. But at Jackson State, that love, that impact, and not just Jackson State, all these HBCUs across the country will forever love him, are honestly forever indebted to him, because I think that mindset has now been flipped in all aspects. Like, yo, we can really do this. Like, at first, it just took one person, it took a trendsetter, and for every trend, there's a trendsetter. And so Prime, no offense, there wasn't a trendsetter yet. He came and become that trendsetter, show that you can get 5 stars, show that you can get 4 stars, show that you can play on national television and get big time commercials or whatever. Like, that just hadn't happened before, at least hadn't happened for a long time. And now folks are like, yo, I know I can do that. I can do that too. And so that mindset has now been flipped, and the rest of them are forever indebted to him, honestly.